Hey everyone, it's Nathan here, and I want to tell you about a new podcast that Community Christian is starting just for parents. Look, we know that being a parent can be difficult and complicated and tiring at times, but we know, as we say all the time, that the life Jesus offers us is easy, light, and full of rest. And we want to help you and your children find that life. And here at Community Christian, we want to do all we can to help you as you raise your children to love Jesus and his way of life even more. One thing that study after study shows is that for the emotional, psychological, and spiritual development of children, one thing that is key to that is the amount of relational connection they experience with their parents and with their families. And one key metric to really determine the health of those kind of relationships is the amount of time that families spend doing kind of the same activity together. So things like meals around a table together as a regular practice, regular family game nights or family movie nights. And so you probably know that here at Community Christian, we try to help you in providing you opportunities to have those moments with your kids. We have these family game night events where we invite you and your family and other families from the church to come together and have some fun playing games around a table, making memories, building bonds and relationships together. We also give you resources like take-home cards and things that you can do as a family around the dinner table to talk about what you're learning in your life, but also in your relationship with God. And what we're going to be doing here in this podcast is we're starting a new podcast called the Family Movie Night Podcast that is designed to help you as a family to have a regular once a month movie night with your children. In fact, we're challenging every family in our church to take one night a month and have a regular movie night together. In our world where nearly everyone has their own phone, tablet, device where they can stream their own movie, TV show, content to their own device individually, the regular practice of sitting down together as a family to share an experience can not just be a fun thing to do, it can be incredibly meaningful. You see, movies provide us as parents an opportunity where we can talk about some maybe very delicate subjects and emotions and things our kids are dealing with in a way that they actually want to listen to because they're engaged with the story. And we have a chance to talk about our relationship with Jesus and our views on life and the things that we find important. And so we're starting a weekly podcast called the Family Movie Night Podcast, where every week we have a team of hosts that are going to sit down and talk about a movie that maybe you as a family could pick as your monthly movie night movie. And we're not just going to recommend a great movie for you and your kids, no matter what their age is. We're also going to give you some ideas of things you could talk about during and after the movie to make it an even more meaningful experience for both you and your kids. And maybe the idea of having a meaningful discussion doesn't sound all that fun, but I think it's going to be a really great journey if all of our families at our church could agree, hey, we're not just going to sit down and share an experience together, but we're going to talk about life. We're going to talk about faith. We're going to talk about Jesus together. And so we have a team of hosts who are going to do that. And I would love to introduce them to you right now. We went ahead and filmed kind of an introductory episode to give you an idea of what this podcast is going to be like and maybe give us a chance to tell you a little bit about why we think it's important. So why don't you go ahead and watch that right now. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode ever of the Family Movie Night podcast here at Community Christian Church. You probably don't know anything about this or why you are getting this video, why it is showing up in your news feed, or if it got texted to you or emailed to you, you're wondering, why am I watching this right now? Well, first, let me just introduce myself. My name is Nathan Martin. I am on staff here at Community Christian, and I am a long-time movie nerd. I have been called a movie snob, a smug, the good, the bad, the smugly. All of those things have been applied to me when it comes to my movie enjoyment or lack thereof. But I am joined right now by two good friends, one really long-time friend, another newer friend that I'd love to introduce you to, that will help us understand why we're doing this podcast. So first up, let me introduce you to a longtime friend of mine. We have been having conversations about movies and TV shows that have bored our wives and everyone around us for years and years and years. If you're ever on our online live stream on Sunday mornings, you already know him. He is the man, the myth, the legend, Ronald Donald Dorsey. Hello, Donnie. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Just ready to talk about these movies and these TV shows where people will either agree, disagree, or be indifferent, but I'm going to make it where they go either way.
Yeah, you're going to try and make them. You're going to try and make it as divisive as possible. That's Donnie.
Exactly.
Donnie
Exactly.
as divisive as he can. We like to call him the hottest takes this side of the Mississippi. So that's good. So Donnie, just for people who don't know, you are a dad. You're a married man. So ladies, sorry. Donald Dorsey, just a married man. Here's also one thing I'll say before we get too far. I'm trying my hardest to convince people that your name is Ronald Donald Dorsey. They'll never know the truth. But anyway, Donnie, you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your family. You got two kids, beautiful kids. I know they're also movie and TV fans. So tell us a little bit about your family.
All right, let's see. So like you said, I'm married. Got I think 10 plus years under my belt.
There you go.
I'd say that means something, but much like many people will know, you learn as you go. And
Absolutely.
So the duration does not mean experience is learned. So
that's right. Sometimes you just get older.
Exactly. Like,
you don't
yes,
get wiser.
I made it to a new year and she's not, and we've done well, you know? And then, so I got a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old that, at times put me in a position where they say things that are clever and I don't know what to do because I want to laugh, but I'm like, wait a minute, I'm the parent. This is not that moment.
Yeah,
so,
you can't talk to your mom that way, but it was really hilarious.
The moments where they say something super clever and I'm like, ooh, that was, wait, no, stop it. That's not good. Talk to me later.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so you've got a girl.
Yep.
7-year-old girl and 4-year-old boy. About to not be 4. His birthday's coming up, right?
Yep, his birthday is December.
Yeah.
We jokingly called him little tax break.
Yeah.
Because he was born
right at the end of the year.
Right before the end of the year. So, came the time for taxes. It was like, oh, look what you get. You're the gift that keeps on giving us.
Absolutely. All right. So real quick, before we move on to our next host here, Donnie, what is the movie your kids are obsessed, or TV show? Like, what is the thing that's on repeat in your home right now?
There is a show right now that they super love. It's called Gabby's Dollhouse.
Oh my goodness. Gabby's Dollhouse.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, that's what I just looked at my wife's in the other room. Apparently my daughters are watching Gabby's Dollhouse right now in the other room.
Wow. That's hilarious.
New season just came out.
Yep. They were literally counting down the days. They were like, wait a minute, there's 7 more days. I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. I can't get you to do like simple things, but you can remember to count down the days until a show comes out.
You somehow always forget to flush the toilet, but you can know, when the new season of Gabby's Dollhouse is coming out.
Exactly. I'm like, okay. Make it make sense, kid. Make it make sense.
Well, very good. Let's go ahead and introduce our next host here. This is Sawyer. Sawyer has been a part of our church for about coming up on 4 months now. Is that right?
At the end of the month, it'll be 3 months.
3 months.
Yeah,
okay.
3 months. Yeah. I got here at the very beginning of August, and when we're filming this, it's the end of October. So
Okay. Well, Sawyer, for those of you who don't know, is a resident at our church, which means he comes onto our staff. He's working part-time. I'll let Sawyer tell you where he's from. He's not from Georgia. He moved here because he is a ministry resident. He is learning the skills of ministry. He is working with our family ministry, which is why he's on this podcast. I'll explain more about it in just a moment. But Sawyer is not only interested in family ministry and helping to disciple your children and your students, but he's also a big movie buff. And so I thought, hey, Sawyer needs to come on this podcast and be a regular host with us. So Sawyer, why don't you introduce yourself? Where are you from? And what is it about maybe your family growing up in movies, and talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I'm not from Georgia. I'm from a small town in southwest Missouri called Carthage, and it is very small, like very stereotypical. I think of like for a movie example, like Smallville, where Superman is from. Very, very similar to that small, very isolated town that's very like sweet and loving, and very, very boring. Not a ton to do. And that actually kind of is a large part of why I loved movies, because, there was basically two things to do. From like when I was a kid, at least, there was two things that I could do that I loved. That was watch movies and go outside and stuff and find something to do outside. And oftentimes what I would do outside was motivated by something I saw on a movie. So like growing up, I'll never forget the first time that I saw Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, and then I wanted to go outside and pretend to be a character from one of those things. Or
you're like, Mom, where's the closest volcano?
Well, exactly.
I've got this. Give me your wedding ring. I gotta get to a volcano.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like we joke about it now, but like there was times where I remember being like, this is like I remember when I was a kid, I wanted to be a Jedi, like with everything in me. I would like. I wanted a lightsaber, even though I know now if I had a lightsaber, I would chop my own arm off in like 30 seconds.
That's why you got to get that Kylo Ren one that chops your arm off for you. It's already venting on the side.
But no. And so my relationship with movies is very much like I loved movies from an early age. And as I got older, also, I will say this, as I got older, movies became an opportunity. As my relationship with Jesus developed, I'll say, I started seeing signs that I didn't start seeing Jesus in movies and stuff like that, but I started seeing themes that I was like, that's recurring in like my personal life is the thing in my walk with Jesus. Maybe there's something there. And so that just spurred on that love of both movies and my love of Jesus as well. So.
Well, absolutely. Well, that's a great transition into what this podcast is about. If you've watched this far in already, I don't know what kind of self-punishment you're into, but if you've made it this far into the podcast, this is what this podcast is about. The Family Movie Night podcast was something that I talked to both Donnie and Sawyer about. And we kind of developed it together as this idea of the family ministry of our church, that's children and students in middle and high school. We are always trying to partner with parents to help them raise their children to be disciples of Jesus, to be people who love Jesus above everything else. And we know that family is key to that the role parents play in the lives of their children and their development of following Jesus is just critical. And not just parents, but the entire family unit, kids and parents and how all that works together in the life of a family is absolutely critical. And so we had this idea that we know it's just important for families to spend time together. If you're involved in our family ministry, we're regularly saying, hey, have a family game night. We have big events that are family game night events where we invite families in our church to come do a game night together. We regularly talk about the importance of having meals together, eating meals around table. All the research continues to point to that one of the healthiest indications of a family's emotional, and for children as well, their emotional, mental, psychological, spiritual development is whether the parents are having regular meals with their kids. And I knew, at least in my life, and I know in Donnie's life, it's the same way. And then talking to Sawyer about his life growing up, family movie nights are a big part of that. In that, you get to be together doing the same thing and watching, having a shared experience that you can then talk about. And so our goal of this Family Movie Night podcast is we are going to challenge every family in our church to have one family movie night a month. All right. You set aside one night a month that you say, we're going to sit down, we're going to watch a movie together. And I know sometimes that can be complicated if you've got a teenager and a 6-year-old, because it's hard to figure out what are we going to watch. And in our experience, this is why we thought we needed a podcast about this. In our experience as a parent, but also I worked in youth ministry at our church for 10 years, talking with parents. The biggest struggle I see that parents tend to have when it comes to movies is trying to figure out what to watch that both they will like, their kids will like, and is appropriate. And so our first goal in this is to give you recommendations for movies that you could watch with your kids and that you would actually sit down one night a month and just sit with our kids. No phones, no distractions. We're going to sit down and share this experience together. But our second goal is this. We believe that what's most important when you choose to pick a movie for your family is not the content. What I mean by content is objectionable content. Obviously, there have to be limits, but most of us spend our time as parents going, oh, well, this one has a certain word that I don't want my kids to hear. Or, oh, it's talking about a subject I'm not sure if I want my kids. That might be awkward to have to watch that with my kids. But in my experience as a parent, how my parents parented me is the benefit of movies is they are a way for you to sit with your children in a safe space because it's not real life and talk about issues that really matter. Talk about things, emotions, situations they might find themselves in that they can maybe relate to, or that the themes of the movie allow you to talk about things that really matter. And so in this kind of introductory podcast, I wanted us to kind of talk about why we thought this podcast matters and why you as a parent should want to watch it. So like I've laid out, this is the way the podcast is going to work. Every single episode, you are going to get, after this one, you are going to get a movie. We're going to talk about a movie that we think would be great, either for young children or for teenagers, like if you got mainly teenagers in the house, or one that we think will work for both. If you got both kids and teenagers in the room, we're always going to try and pick things that we think don't have that much objectionable content in it. But ultimately, what we're hoping is to give you conversation starters that you can have with your kids while watching the movie, to be able to actually talk about things that matter more. That you aren't just sitting down and watching the Avengers, which I love the Avengers, but then getting to the end and going, well, glad we watched that. Although if you're doing that, good goal. But an even better goal, parenting pro tip, is to be able to watch a movie and then say, hey, let's talk about what this brought up in you. Maybe this movie had a scary moment. How does it feel when you're scared? How do we handle things when we're scared? What's scary about that? Or when something happens and it's a kind of sad moment. Hey, what made you sad in that moment? And being able to kind of talk through the things that really matter to you. Because for me, and then I'm going to toss it to my hosts here. For me, the most important thing with watching movies is movies and TV shows, the content we consume, it shapes us. Whether we know it, it is shaping what we care about, what we think about. And it's not just as simple as I'm watching a movie and it doesn't have any bad language or there's no violence in this movie, so it's not shaping me. Some of the worst messages I ever see in movies are in kids' films that are rated G. I'll just say that. There's nothing objectionable in it, but the stuff it's teaching my kids, I go, that is not a lesson I want my kids to learn. And so we want to be able to either talk about it in a way that you can tell your kids, hey, that's not something you want to emulate. Or that they can say, hey, wow, wasn't that great? Let's talk about that. So, Donnie, when we started talking about this podcast, what got you excited? Why did you feel like for parents in our church, you felt like this is an important podcast that they should pay attention to?
I mean, I think the first thing that got me was that, of course, liking movies and like stuff like that was definitely a plus. But I think like as a parent, it's those questions you talked about earlier, is that finding something that's appropriate that you can sit down and watch with, like, you know, because for me, I have kids in close proximity of age, but you know, there are times where some like themes are a little bit more advanced for my younger child, like that's 4 years old, like, and it may be like you said, there's moments where there's more scary moments, you know, and it's like, oh, that's, you know, that freaked them out a little bit. And so like for me, like I kind of wish that there was an opportunity for me to like someone to say, hey, look, you got kids, or like you're trying to have like build that opportunity. Like, you know, here's some movie recommendations and here's the reasons why, and here's some topics that come from it. Because like when I'm sitting there and I'm like watching this movie, I know sometimes like there are moments where like, okay, there's long periods of the time in the movie where there's absolutely nothing really going on. It's just building the story. But then there's moments where like you see something happen with the character and you watch like little moments happen, like whether it be the kids like responding to something and going, oh, well, that was mean, or that was cool. And then, you know, then helping like to be able to guide a parent or help a parent going, hey, you know, that moment you just probably saw, you know, around here, just check out for this moment. This is a really good opportunity to talk to your kids about this particular thing.
Yeah.
Because I think it's going to be, it's something that I think it's the thing you need that you don't know you need, because a lot of times, like, I don't know about y'all, like, but a lot of times, like when I'm trying to pick out a movie, sometimes it's on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, I'm like scanning through it, watching the trailer. I'm like, I hope this is okay. And then, you know, and then I come across, I'm like, hey, this was a really good movie. And like, and the theme of it was bigger than just the kids. Like I'm watching it, I'm enjoying it, you know, at that level.
So Donnie, give me an example of a movie that you watched where you thought, oh man, the theme here is an opportunity for me to talk to my kids about something that really matters.
Well, I'm glad you asked, because like a really good point of that was when I was watching Wreck-It Ralph. Like, and if anybody's watched Wreck-It Ralph, like, you know, you're watching it and it seems like it's just these two friends that are kind of like just building a relationship and kind of having their banter, but there's moments in it, if you pay really close attention, that it shows codependency, where one depends very heavily on the other. And a lot of times we don't realize sometimes how when we're in with relationships, we can be more focused on like depending on one another, like and overly depending. It's like, hey, I depend on you for my happiness and for my mental well-being. And the truth of the matter is it shouldn't be that way. It should be allowing each other, like you shouldn't be so codependent or dependent on someone that you're not allowing each other to grow, you know, in the way that they need to.
Well, and I think that's what's huge. You really see that in Ralph Breaks the Internet, the second one, when he doesn't allow her to grow and change, and he becomes the villain. He as this kind of, and it's a mixture of like a parental figure and, like you said, like a of not being able to let someone go and allow them to be the person they need to be. And he ends up becoming the villain. He becomes this monstrous version, or as at the time my 3-year-old daughter said, "That's a big Wreck-It Ralph." She screamed that in the movie theater when we were watching. "That's a big Wreck-It Ralph." So, and I was like, "Yes, it is. Shut up." But hey, you know, I think that's a good point what you made though, Donnie. And I've noticed this, and I think this is something. And so I'll go from another angle on the same thing. Anytime I watch superhero movies with my kids, I think most people watch superhero movies and they go, the theme of the movie is good versus evil, and that good beats evil, and that's the theme. I think those are not the best things to talk about, because every movie is about good versus evil, and every person thinks they are good and the other person is evil. In real life, it's that way. There has never been a war where the person on the other side of the war said, you know what? We are the evil ones. Even if what they're doing, he's like, guys, maybe we're the bad guys. Like, everyone thinks we're on the side of goodness. We're on the side of righteousness. And so what I talk to my kids a lot when we watch superhero movies is this how the world gets better? Is the way that good beats evil through the getting a really strong person to beat up another really strong person? That if every good guy could just become big and strong and kill and beat the bad guy, then the world would be better. And they even at that age go, oh, well, I guess that's not how the world gets better. But that's how we think that's the message we just assume when we watch superhero movies. And there's actually one I hope we talked about at one point called Doctor Strange, which I know both of you guys are fans of. It's a Marvel movie. That is not the message. The message actually has a different way that good beats evil. And it's a really beautiful message. So anyway, it's just those kind of things when you're watching a movie to be able to look at and say, man, here's a moment for me, not even to teach my kids, but just to talk about them, about the way they're being shaped.
So something that actually you were just talking about, is when a superhero movie's whole shtick is just exterior day, good guy punches bad guy. That's not enough. So I think about a movie like The Incredibles, which has a whole lot more than that. That's a movie about a dad who's losing grip on his family. Alternatively, it's also a movie about a son who's really insecure about who he wants to be. And it's about a daughter who is really afraid of herself almost. And it's about this mom who wants to be who she is, but also feels like she has a duty to not be it. And so there's all these themes that a family, especially like in the context of this podcast, can really gel well in a conversation. There's a lot of good things to talk about in terms of like movies that like caused me to have these conversations. I think about movies like the first time I was in, I don't know, I must have been in like high school, the first time I saw The Matrix, and I watched it. Just like my dad was like, hey, you want to watch this movie? It came out in the 90s before, like when you were really a baby and stuff like that. You want to watch it? And I was like, sure, why not? I thought it was
Sawyer, I just want to let you know, all the parents watching this podcast are a little frustrated that you just referred to a movie that came out in 1999 as something that came out when you were a baby. So
I know, right? But
Donnie's like, well, that's it. Old man walks into the sea.
But
sorry, go ahead. The Matrix, very profound.
Yeah. So I remember like watching it thinking this is going to be some movie that my dad loves or whatever. And then I watched it and I was like, oh, this movie is like more about me and stuff like that. And so whenever we can find movies that are going to help parents have conversations with their kids when their kids see themselves in a movie almost, that's what I'm excited about.
Sure. So starting next week, you're going to get an episode released every week where we're going to talk about a movie. And the first 4 are all going to be themed around holiday movies, because Christmas time is one of those times that you just naturally want to show movies to your kids and sit around together, maybe with some hot cocoa. That's a big thing in my house. And just watch these movies, and you naturally just talk about your memories and what you watched growing up as a kid. And so we're going to take some great holiday movies. Some you probably have seen, they're classics, and maybe a couple that you never have seen before. But we want to talk about these together and maybe give you some handles to start conversations with your kids about some important ideas that aren't just about Christmas, but are about Jesus and his way of life. And maybe you're not much of a movie person, and so you're kind of thinking you want to tune out for this whole thing. But here's why I think you might want to give this podcast a shot, and really this whole idea of movie nights a shot. Stories are a powerful way to shape our imagination about what a good life is. Human beings are naturally storytellers. We do it all the time. The Bible itself is not just a list of commands, it's primarily a story. Jesus didn't just come and give out a laundry list of commands. He taught through stories, because stories are memorable, they stick with us, but they also inspire us. They somehow bypass our brain and go straight to our heart. They shape what we love and what we care about. And see, here's the truth. You may not be watching movies with your kids, but I promise you, they are engaging with stories, whether it's movies or TV shows, Netflix, TikTok, YouTube. They are hearing stories. They're engaging with stories. And when they're not with you, they're being introduced to all kinds of content. You know, as a parent, we often get very hung up and worried on introducing our kids to content that may bring up ideas that we don't necessarily agree with. But you know, when your kids aren't with you, you're not in control of what ideas they're being introduced to. My kids go to church and talk with other kids, and they come home from church with ideas from other kids that I go, what? That's a dumb idea. I'm always having to do that. And so as parents, I think sometimes we get very worried about introducing them to things we may not even agree with. But here's what I've always thought. As a parent, I would rather be able to be with them when they're introduced to ideas I don't agree with, so I can help them interpret it and think through it and ask the right kind of questions. Do you really think that's the best way to live? Do you really think that's a good idea? Rather than allowing them to experience that way of life, those ideas on their own, and interpret it on their own, or allow someone else to interpret it for them. So movie nights are this powerful way for us to sit with our kids and watch these stories and engage with them and allow them to get into our heart, and then have conversations, meaningful conversations, to shape what we love and what we care about. So I hope you'll join us on this journey of not just watching the podcast, but having a movie night so you can help shape your children's imaginations of what the good life Jesus offers is about. So we together can help you raise your children to love Jesus and his way of life more than anything else through these stories that just surround our culture. So I hope you'll join us next week as we start this journey together. If you want to get all these episodes, make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel or you're following us on Facebook. If you're listening to this right now on a podcast app like iTunes or Spotify, make sure you subscribe so you get all of our feeds. You'll also get our weekly Teaching Team podcast and our weekly services right here on your feed. So make sure you join us as we go on this journey together.